Welcome to the Foster Your Passion podcast, where entrepreneurs, who are mostly women, share their passions, their lessons, and leave you feeling uplifted, motivated, and possibly even inspired to go and foster your own passion. I'm your host, Hayley Foster, and this is the Foster Your Passion podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Foster Your Passion podcast. I am here today with another Hayley, and I really just love meeting other Hayleys that spell it the same way, that are around the same age as me, because I just think it's so fun to talk about we're going to talk about this, how you felt as a child with the name of Hayley. But before we get into that, I want to give you a great introduction here. You are not just a Hayley, but you are a Dr. Hayley, and you have studied neuroscience. And I can't wait to dive into this conversation with you today and talk about how people can learn from you and start putting your practices into play in their everyday life. So Dr. Hayley, welcome so much to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Hayley. It's so weird whenever we email each other and I address it, "Hi, Hayley," or "Dear Hayley," or something, and I'm like, wait a second, it's spelled the same. It's so unique. I love it. I'm so glad that we met.
Yeah, so fun. And so funny, the other day we were on Clubhouse and there was another Hayley in the room, except she didn't have the double Ys, but
Yes.
There was a whole bunch of us with double Ys on Clubhouse, which is very
It's
funny.
unique. Yeah, I love it. I don't meet many of us, so it's really cool.
All right, well, let's jump into this right now because I love having this conversation with people. So do you know were you named after somebody?
Hayley Mills, actually.
Oh my God, me too.
Were you really?
Yes.
That's so funny.
So
many
funny.
people don't even know who Hayley Mills is, but yes, Hayley Mills, the original Parent Trap. Yeah.
I know a lot of people that may listen to this will not know who she is, but so my mother is British. My mother is British, and she needed a name that started with an H, and one of her aunts said, "How about Hayley for Hayley Mills?" So
that's great. I mean, and then younger generations than us, they were like, "Oh, is it Hayley like Eminem's daughter?" And I feel like the young ones now don't even know who Eminem is, so that doesn't even work anymore. But I usually say, "Oh, it's just like the Comet, except with two Ys." So
I say the same thing. People are like, "What's your name again?" I'm like, "Just think of Hayley's Comet." I'm like, "Oh, that's good. I got that."
Yeah, except we actually pronounce our name correctly. So
we do. And so as a kid, I have to admit, I had a huge problem with this. It was a hard name. And I used to make my friends introduce me because I didn't really know how to say it. So I was always Hayley to my mother with her British accent. And then my friends would call me Hayley or Hale.
yeah.
Which, makes you think there's an I in there, but there's not. And so I never really knew how to say my name. And Hayley sounded weird to me for whatever reason. And so it was a hard name as a kid.
Yeah, I would say, "Oh, hay is for horses," and then Lee, like Hey Lee. So my mom's name is Leanne, and people always shorten her name to Lee. So then people would come over, "Hey, Lee," and then both of us would turn and look. So that was always confusing as well.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
That's very funny. All right, that's awesome. So another Hayley named after Hayley Mills. I love it.
Love it.
All right. Well, since that's where you began, give us the short version of how you became Dr. Hayley.
So doctor, so I have my PhD. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a clinician. I have my PhD from Johns Hopkins University in psychological and brain sciences. So that's how I became a doctor. But I really didn't know what I wanted to do as a doctor. And honestly, I thought when I started undergrad, had my blinders on. I was like, I'm going to medical school. So I was biology pre-med major, and that is what I'm going to study. And I don't want to take any extracurriculars. I don't want to do anything else. But it's funny because I picked the college that I went to because I also had a really strong passion for performing arts. So I did a lot of musical theater and dancing. I was a tap dancer. And so went to the college that I chose because it had really good academics, but I was also able to minor in musical theater. And basically I had to pick an elective, and I picked psychology as my elective. And I'm like, oh my gosh, shut the front door. This is what I want to study. I love the brain. This is what I want to do. And it was, it was from that moment on, I was like, I need to know as much about the brain as possible, how people do what they do, why they do it, all the ins and outs with going all the way from the cellular level all the way up to more like philosophical approaches on and evolution, just studying it all. And so after undergrad, I thought I wanted to go into clinical work, and I did some research with the National Institutes of Health, both with National Institutes of Mental Health and National Institute on Drug Abuse, and realized quickly that I didn't want to do research with human subjects, and instead switched over to animal models where I could actually like poke and prod in the brain and really delve deep into understanding how things happen, right? So we can talk about motivation and the dopamine reward. And actually, I was able to measure dopamine release and, the timing of it and how that all happened, which got me into my PhD program where I studied motivated behaviors. Specifically, I studied sexual behavior, but then I don't study sex behavior anymore. But then that's a whole nother podcast. And then did a couple different stints doing some consulting work with some engineering firms. I was an expert testifier for a little bit, and fell back into academia, but as a professor, so in front of the classroom instead of sitting in the seats, which I had been doing since I was 4. So
Right.
that's where I truly found my passion, was teaching. And, I feel like once you understand a lot of those nitty gritty details, to be able to actually explain it to other people is when you really hone your skill and become a master in your field. So that's what I've been doing for a really long time. And I absolutely love it. Wouldn't want to be doing anything else other than teaching and harnessing the power of the brain and being able to instill that passion and that knowledge to other people.
Excellent. So take us through a little bit about what you are teaching other people right now. So I know you have a course coming up in 2022, an academy. Can you talk a little bit about that just to give people an understanding of how you now implement all that education into the day-to-day?
So it's funny. So I've been teaching in college for, so long, and people were coming up to me and asking me, I really want to take a class with you, but I don't want to enroll in the college. I don't want to take a 16-week full semester long course and have to re-enroll in college. I just want to take, sit down with you for a couple hours or something like that. So this idea where I started Be Well with Dr. Hayley actually came about because people wanted to just talk to me and learn more from me. So I have consulting services where, I can work with businesses and individuals, as well as, just groups of people to consult on whatever problems or situations that they might need a neuroscientist for, to be able to understand how the brain works. And then I also do live seminars for continuing education credits, and those are mainly geared towards clinical social workers, psychological counselors, school counselors, things like that, because they need to get a certain number of continuing ed credits each year. And then I realized there's a whole group of people who would like a bigger, more foundational understanding. So not necessarily master's and PhD level people, but people maybe have a bachelor's, maybe some didn't even go to college, but they're working with other people. So people like coaches like yourself or anybody like that who's working with others, but want to understand more about what the brain is doing so that they can help other people. So that's where this idea of the Academy of Cognitive and Behavioral Neuroscience came about. And I'm in the process of developing it right now. And that's going to be a self-paced course with several modules, and you'll have a certificate of completion at the conclusion of it. And there'll be office hours opportunities. There's going to be a lot of fun activities and workshops, and both live as well as pre-recorded. And it's going to be really fun and definitely worthwhile. So I'm super excited about that. So I just loved the acronym ACBN, so Academy of Cognitive and Behavioral Neuroscience. That's how it all kind of came about. So I'm able to really open up and reach more people from a variety of different needs, and people who just want to understand more about the brain and how it can help them help other people. It's kind of like that trickle down effect. So I can, by teaching one person now, I can impact hundreds, if not thousands.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I mean, I just love how you've sort of took your education and you've turned it into, teaching and brokering that knowledge out to other people. That's great. So one of the questions I had for you is, how do you feel? It's kind of like a trick question, but I'm curious, did you see The Social Dilemma?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember.
So
I was thinking you were thinking Social Network, but Social Dilemma. Yes, I did see that.
okay, so from like a one of the first books I read was a book called Neuromarketing, and it was written by I don't remember what his background is, but he was a neuroscientist. Spent years studying the brain, and one of the biggest things I learned from him was, what's the trigger response that's going to get somebody to respond to what you're saying. And one of the stories that he tells in the book, and he told in this talk where I first met him, was about there was a homeless man on the street, and he was holding up a sign that said, can you spare any change, for a hungry homeless man? And so the story is, I don't know if this is the real story, but I love that he told it in the story, was that he walked back to the guy and asked him how much money he had made with his sign. And he said, well, I haven't made much today, maybe about $2 or $3. So he said, let's change your sign and see how it does for you. And so he changed the sign to say, don't quote me on this, but something along the lines of like, what if you were starving? And put it
Mhm.
into that position where it's like, it's going to evoke that feeling for somebody else. And so he like checked back in on the guy the next day, and he's like, I made $150. He's like, so as far as like the social dilemma, right, is concerned, and in terms of how we're so marketed to this day and age, I'm curious, I'm kind of laughing to myself, is like, are you using those emotional response triggers in your own marketing to put your course out there? Because a lot of times, and I'm reading the Russell Brunson book from ClickFunnels on expert secrets and how like you have to tell that story so that people can have that aha moment, and you're going to hit them at the core of their emotion because that's the first trigger as opposed to processing the words, right? So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this, and if you're using your education to your benefit.
No, I'm not. I'm not using my education to my benefit, but what I do is I teach others how to do that. So, one of the key things that you pinpointed there was emotion, and when we're talking about neuroplasticity, which is the fancy word for being able to change our brain, and when we're creating new habits and we're doing new things. So, if you're working with a client and you want them to, or if they want to do X, Y, and Z, and you're trying to motivate them to get there, there's a few things that you could do. Is one is attach an emotional value to whatever it is. And so that story that you beautifully told, whether or not it's true or you were ad-libbing, right? But that idea of adding emotion to it actually increases the neuroplasticity. So it makes it easier for the brain to change. And then once the brain is changed and you have this pathway really established, it becomes automatic. And then people are more likely to behave or do or produce in that way. Other ways that you can increase neuroplasticity would be to create a unique, novel environment. So that's why people, when they immerse in a culture and they travel, it's so much easier to learn a language than if they're just sitting at home in this, looking at the same four walls, wearing the same clothes, eating the same foods, and they're just trying to memorize words. They're involved and really immersed. So novel environments are also really good to increase neuroplasticity. And aerobic activity, right? So 3 different things that you can actually use to your benefit to allow your brain to change and make that neuroplasticity stronger. So am I using those techniques for my own benefit? I am doing them for other motivational things that I want to get done. However, actually doing the marketing, that's where I reach out to pros. That's where I reach out to people who study that. And then we can have the intellectual conversations. Like, they'll say, oh, you really want to end your sale with a number 7. People are more likely to buy. And then I'm like, oh, really? Show me the research on that. And then we have a conversation about it. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I didn't even think about that. But, that's all psychology. And so hiring coaches and people to help me, just who are experts in that field, let them teach me what to do. So yes, I am a teacher and all knowing, or no, I'm not, but I'm also a student and I'm willing to learn and grow. And, I am a lifelong learner. So I love partnering with people who know more than me in certain fields, who can help me be the best version of myself, or my business be the best version it can be as well.
I'm of the same mindset in terms of lifelong learning. I'm always striving to learn something new every single day. But what's really interesting that you said, and I have not ever thought about this, is I have found, and I found this in July, I had COVID. And I started walking every day because I couldn't go to the gym, obviously. And I didn't want to infect everybody. But
Yeah.
I started walking and I was listening to books while I was walking. And that exercise mixed with the audio and the education, I remember saying to my husband a couple of days into doing this, I was like, I feel like my retention is so much greater when I'm exercising and listening to an audiobook than like if I'm sitting in the car and just trying to absorb. And
And even if it's a task that you can't do while exercising, just increasing, 30 minutes a day of aerobic activity a few times a week will really help. Because what ends up happening is as you're exercising and doing aerobic activity, you're increasing the release of a compound known as BDNF, which stands for brain derived neurotrophic factor. And it's this chemical that protects the brain cells. So it keeps them alive. It prevents them from dying, but then it also helps speed up the neurogenesis, the creation of new neurons. And that's what we're doing with neuroplasticity. We're creating new connections. And so sometimes that means, forming new neurons, but then it also means weeding out some of those old bad habits that we want to get rid of. And so we need this, that flexibility, that plasticity in our brain. And a great way that you can do that is increasing BDNF. And aerobic activity is one of the best ways that you can increase naturally BDNF in your brain, especially in areas like your hippocampus, which is involved with memory. So that's why you were able to retain that information, really process it better, because you had more BDNF. So now, see, you learn something new every day.
wow. And if I actually drink wine while I'm working out, I won't kill brain cells.
Well, I didn't say that. A little bit of wine is actually quite beneficial for you, but you just don't want to drink, 10 bottles in one sitting.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah.
All right, BDNF, I'm going to remember that. If not,
Yeah,
I'll check the
absolutely.
show notes. But that's super interesting. So, how long have you been on this journey? Is this the first program you're putting out there in
It
2022?
is. So I dabbled with network marketing and owning a small business, kind of as just like a side hustle, something that I loved the products and I loved the community, and why not kind of a situation. This business actually started, it really happened. The idea of it began out of necessity. Due to the pandemic, my husband had lost his job, and we sat down and we were thinking, okay, well, what are we going to do? And he said, I can't work for another person ever again, right? Like, I'm not a good employee. I want to own my own business. And so we started thinking about, okay, we both put our entrepreneurial hats on and said, okay, well, what are your superpowers? What are you really good at? And so we came up with some really great ideas for his business. And at the same time, I'm like, well, I have some superpowers. I want to play along. I want to do some of this stuff too. And that's where Be Well with Dr. Hayley came about. And then it was the same time I joined Clubhouse and just started meeting new people and making these new connections. And I'm like, wow, this is something that could really take off. And why not put my all into it? I got approval from my college. So I'm still a full-time professor. And they said, go ahead. Great. This is fantastic. It's almost promoting the college even, putting you out there. And I'm writing a book in this spring on the motivation of like habits and just motivation in general and drive and what gets people to do things. I'm partnering with somebody who I met on Clubhouse as well. And, we're also in the talks of putting a course together. So it's like all of these different things. It's all about just being open to trying new things and seeing what ends up happening. My husband ended up getting a job, so I didn't end up actually needing this business. But so I sat down and I said, okay, well, we don't need this anymore. And then that's when I realized, well, I want this.
Right.
I want this for me. I want this for my family. And I want it for the people whose lives I'm able to touch. And so that's why I continue to do it and continue to have fun with it. And if it ever stops becoming fun, then I'll stop doing it. But,
Yeah.
that's the beauty of, owning your own business. You get to call the shots. And I love it. I'm super excited about it. And I've seen a lot of, transformation, even in just a short period of time. It hasn't even been a year that I've had the business. And some of my students have come back to me and, they completed certificates, and they said, "Oh my gosh, that was so enlightening. I feel like I'm back at college again." They were like, "I wish I had you as a college professor." And they learn stuff and then be able to actually use that with their clients and with their practice. So it's been very rewarding so far, and the sky's the limit. I'm really excited to see where it all goes.
Yes, it is. I'm excited to see where it goes too. So what's been the biggest challenge for you since you started doing this?
I'm such a type A personality. As a lifelong learner and a type A/perfectionist, I want to understand everything. So I designed my own website. I want to learn how to do it all. And there's just only 24 hours in a day. And so it's really balancing that self care and making sure, because there were definitely some times where I started feeling some burnout. And I'm like, wait a second. Just like I said, if it stops becoming fun, I'm going to stop doing it. And I said, when did this stop becoming fun? It was just a couple week period. And I'm like, it's because I'm trying to do it all. I'm trying to take on too much. And I need to step back and think, why am I doing this? It's for my family. It's for me. And if it stops becoming about that, then I need to start delegating and asking for help and being okay with that. So that has been the hardest I'm just so used to being, having the mother role. Like I run my household and I run the classroom at the college. And it's just like, all of a sudden I need to start giving those tasks out to other people and trusting that they're going to do at least as good, but hopefully better than what I would have done on my own.
And I think as women, women that are type A, right, is a very difficult thing to do. Have you done your Enneagram?
No, I have not.
Okay. I'm curious what Enneagram number.
Send me some information on that. We'll chat
Okay,
about it.
we'll take the conversation offline. I have a person I can refer you to if you want to get the test done. But it's a personality test, and it teaches you how to focus in the areas where you're strongest, and then how to build up the areas where you're not as strong, and the things that you should be doing. But it's very, it's kind of like the eye opening. It's like a similar Myers-Briggs type of thing. But I'm curious as to what Enneagram you would be. I find that I surround myself with sevens, not to. But anyway, yeah, and I think that's a really
too
important.
odd if we were the same number, spelled our name the same, we're named after the same. That would just be too odd.
Yes, I know. All right, we're gonna have to get you tested. All right, stay tuned for part 2 with Dr. Hayley when we find out her Enneagram. And I think as women, again, type A personality, like we want to do it all, we realize very quickly that doing it all does lead to burnout. And one of the things that I help women with is really figure out how to best manage their time, and how to delegate the things that need to be delegated and automate the other things to give you more time, and really to focus on I call them fire starters, the things that light you up. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And those things that don't light you up, I call them fire extinguishers. And those are the things that you should stop doing, and figure out a way. Because when you stop doing those things that don't fill you up, you find time for more of the things that do. So
I've recently found my voice for saying no. I was always the, parent teacher conferences. Yes, I want to be there, and obviously those things I'll be there, but let's do a bake sale. Oh, I'll go to the store and buy some cookies. I don't need to spend because that's not something that lights me up. Other people, if that's something that you enjoy doing, great. Make an extra dozen for me, please. Right. But being able to say no, I think is probably one of the best forms of self-care, because when you're saying no to things, it's opening up so many more opportunities and possibilities for other yeses to come your way.
100%.
That's something that I've learned this past year because of the pandemic, or I guess past 2 years, really being able to relinquish some of that and release it and say, nope, not right now. I'll get to it, and I think people appreciate that as well, because then you're not giving them a subpar version of yourself, that the things that you say yes to, you are giving 100% to. So.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And when you start saying yes to things that you don't want to do, I always say that you end up, again, not giving it the attention or the love behind it that it deserves. And so one of my favorite sayings is, it's not getting the best of you, it's just getting the rest of you.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I again, like I impart on all the women. And when I first started this business, one of the first books I read is The One Thing, by John Keller, and I forget the other guy's name. But there's a sign at the back of it that says, for all those times you can't say no, use this sign to do it for you. And it was just a placard that said no.
Mm.
And I kept it, I cut it out and I kept it on my desk. And it was any time I needed to remember that, I would just look over at my sign and be like, no, I'm so sorry. And it's
Yeah.
empowering. It's
Yeah,
truly
it is.
empowering to be able to
Because
say
it's putting
no to
yourself
things.
first. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're a mom. As I know for me, when I became a mom, they became my whole world. And now I'm slowly starting to realize that if I'm not, filling my cup, I hate that analogy, but it's so true. If
So
my
true.
cup's not filled, I'm not able to pour into them. And so, it is a cliche statement, but it's so true.
It's so true. I mean, I
Yep.
love the cliches. So
Yes.
I'm not opposed to the cliches. Um, so a lot of people that listen to my podcast are women that
Mhm.
are either on the entrepreneurial journey or looking to get started, and they're maybe here for inspiration. So what would you say to somebody who is listening that is considering starting a business, or getting started on their journey towards some form of entrepreneurship?
I say surround yourself with people who are going to uplift you and support you, but also keep it real, right? So if you have a really bad business idea, have somebody to be able to say, okay, maybe you should try going this direction, or maybe these would be better ideal clients. Let's really work on that. And so I think one of the best things is to surround yourself with honest people who truly have your best values at heart. I wouldn't be here. So I know I had mentioned to you, my business coach happened to be, she's actually the reason why I have my business. I never would have thought of it. We were friends from high school and we were just chit chatting, and she was planting seeds probably for about 8 months. She told me afterwards, she was like, just planting little seeds. And then all of a sudden, I thought I miraculously came up with this idea for Be Well with Dr. Hayley. And she was like, oh, good. I'm finally glad you came around. And it was just, surrounding myself with people who really have the best values for me, but aren't going to try to push me. And I would say the same thing for other people, just to be around honest people who aren't going to, just be out there for getting money, getting paid, that they truly want to see you succeed and are willing to, stick their neck out for you, just like you're willing to stick their neck out for them. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Absolutely. I
And to
complete
just go for it. I mean, life is short. If it's something that's
short.
fun, just try it, and be smart with your money and your time. Those are the two most valuable assets, right? And and as long as you're not spreading yourself too thin, then just go for it. What's the worst that's going to happen? At least you know that you tried, you gave it your all, and then if it didn't work, I'm sure you learned some lessons along the way. And then the next journey will be even stronger.
Absolutely. I was listening to some Bob Proctor motivation this morning while I was getting ready. And first of all, if you're not starting your day with motivation, you're doing your whole self a disservice. I find that there's a room on Clubhouse. It's run by this guy, Evan Carmichael. And I always see, like, every morning, I think it's every morning, he's got like some other person that he brings. He does all of these little clips, all these motivational clips, and he focuses on a different person. Maybe he does it weekly. I don't even know. But when I do see that he's on there and I jump in, I get such great motivation from him. And if it's not him that I'm listening to, then I'll try to find like a podcast or a book or something while I'm getting ready, just to give me that daily dose of motivation and inspiration to start my day. And I'm sure there's like a
There
neuroscience
is, there
behind
is.
this,
Yes.
but it just sets my day on like this different energy, like this.
Mhm.
I am like being pulled into like just having a better day. And anyway, so the Bob Proctor comment this morning was, look at who you're surrounding yourself with. And if you look at those people in your top 5 and you say to yourself, would I want my kids to turn out like, A, B, C, or D, or E? And your answer is no, then you should find new people. And I
Yeah.
loved that. I love that because it's so true. I talk about it in a different way, but it was like a great reminder. I always say, like, you can tell who the strong women are. They're the ones lifting each other up. If you're
Mhm.
surrounding yourself with the negative Nellies of the world and the people that are always down and have negative self-talk, you're surrounding yourself with the wrong people. Those are not the people that are going to get you to the next level. And anyone you listen to in the motivation space, whether it's Tony Robbins or Dean Graziosi or Ed Milet, all of them talk about your tribe and making sure your tribe are strong, they are smart, they are, they're where you want to be, right? Because if someone is in your tribe and they're ahead of you, you can learn from them, you can look up to them, and and if they're a go-giver like you are, which I think both of us are, then you're surrounding yourself with people that are going to help you on this path and on this journey. So
if you find yourself in a room and you're the smartest person or the most successful person, you're in the wrong room. You have to
100%.
go, yeah, you have to go, and because then there's people to motivate you to aspire to become. And you don't want to be in a room where, sure, maybe it boosts your self-esteem for a little bit because it's like, oh well, I'm more successful than this, but what are they offering, right? How are they filling you up in any way? And it's so true. And gratitude is another big one that I love to incorporate in my day, and positive affirmations. There is neuroscience behind all of this, and neuroplasticity with that repetition. And it's something that I'm trying to instill in my kids as well. So I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, and every night before bed when we're brushing our teeth, I have them do their affirmations in the mirror so that they're looking at themselves. And now it's just kind of a fun game that we do. But at the beginning, my oldest was really resistant and hesitated to do this. He thought, I was just like, okay, Charlie, repeat after me. I'm Charlie. I'm strong. I'm smart. And I'm loved. Right. I think there was something else that we throw in there sometimes. I let him pick another thing, but strong, smart, and loved. Right. And at first he just looked at me, he's like, Mom, I'm not going to do this. That's stupid. Right. And I said, okay, well, let's pretend that we're a superhero. Right. And I'm like, which superhero do you want? Well, I'm Captain America. Okay. And I'll be Captain Marvel. And let's stand in front of the mirror and start saying it as our characters. I'll tell you what, his first day of second grade, like every other mother in America, I'm out there taking pictures in their cute little outfits. And I said, okay, Charlie, now, do a fun pose. And he looks and he does his like Superman pose and he goes, I am Charlie and I am loved. And he just like pictured that one. And I'm like, I won. I did something right. This is, all summer we were working on our positive affirmations. And I'm like, if every child in America could go to school on their first day of school knowing and believing that they are loved, I mean, it's huge, right? And so I saw the neuroplasticity start working with him with such a little task that we kind of made fun with it. And it's just like we're running around the house upstairs, getting ready for bed, pretending to be our superheroes, saying our affirmations. And now I'm going to, start introducing gratitude and things like that. The brain starts automatically thinking that way. And it's the same with visualizations. You start thinking about, who you want to be, and you start tying those emotions to it. And all of a sudden, your brain is functioning as if you've already achieved those things. So your brain is automatically going to be filled with gratitude. And the decisions that you have to automatically make, thousands of them each day, are from a place of gratitude, from those positive affirmations, from motivation, and so if you're waking up every day and that's part of your daily routine, getting that daily dose of motivation, then I bet those decisions that you make throughout the day that you don't even give two thoughts about have something about what you learned and how that made you feel in the morning to motivate you and push you towards that journey. So yes, there's absolutely science facts behind it. And that's what I love working with people on as well, right? They have these little tricks and tips. And then I'm the type of person that's like, if I don't see the data, if I don't see research behind it, I'm not going to wholeheartedly jump in on basically any program, right? And so that's why I love being able to give people the tools, because I'm sure you're going to encounter people like me who are going to say, show me the facts, show me the research. And so then I can come in and help people like yourself or whoever, right? Whoever might be listening. It's like, yeah, I have this one really resistant client who doesn't want to do gratitude journaling. And it's like, okay, well, let me give you some science behind how gratitude journaling works and show you some imaging studies of the brain and what happens after practicing it and things like that, and some physiological hard science data to back up a lot of these quote unquote fringe or frou-frou type activities that people use that are very effective.
All right, let's talk about this, because I have teenagers who I did not do the superhero poses with when they were little, although I do have.
Not too late.
I know. I did have some pictures of my little one who I let her watch the Amy Cuddy video about the power pose. And I taught it one night at one of the talks that I did. And she was there and she was little. And so, for a couple of weeks, I'd be like, all right, show me your power pose, show me your power stance. And she actually, my little one is a little bit more amenable to following some of mommy's tips and hacks. Whereas my big one, who's 14, and so in it, like I bought her a journal because I need her to start talking through some of the shit she's going through, right? And so instead of it being like, oh, here's a blank journal, just start journaling and entering your stuff. I bought her a journal called Zen as Fuck.
I love it.
And it's all these
Okay,
really...
my kids are teenagers, and I can swear right now my youngest one's like, what's the F word everyone keeps talking about? I'm like, let me know when you figure it out. I'm not going to be the one to tell you, but
Definitely.
I will confirm.
Right. So I bought it for her thinking like, all right, if she's going to journal, I've got to give her some fun prompts. And so the book is like very crass and has some really fun prompts in it. And we were laying in bed last night and she's like, I journaled for a while, years ago, and it didn't do anything. So I need you to send me the data so I can present that to her, or I can have her listen to this. She'll probably kill me that I even talked about her. But thankfully, her friends watch me on Instagram, but actually don't listen to my podcasts. But all right, so is it too late at 14? And if not, give me some tips because I'm going to put this in the show notes and people are going to love it.
It is absolutely, it's never too late. The adage that you can't teach old dogs new tricks is absolutely not true. Anybody can learn something at any age. Kids are a lot more resilient, as you mentioned, like they're just more amenable. It's easier to do that, but the neuroplasticity can happen and it's worth it, and sometimes it's just changing the phrasing, right? Instead of calling it journaling, maybe say, I don't know, come up with something that resonates more with her so that she can have more of that buy-in. For what she's doing. Maybe it's something, it just depends on what she's into. Maybe it could be something like, hey, wouldn't this be really cool 10 years from now to look back and make fun of your thoughts and, things like that. Like, let's just try it and see what happens. But yeah, it's worth it. It really is. And the thing is I teach people this, but then I don't always practice it myself because you can get very easily caught up in these bad habits. And, sometimes you need that swift kick in the rear to get you back on track. So yeah.
I wrote an article this morning for Cool Life. I don't know if you've met Jack Perez along the way. She runs a platform called Cool Life, and it's for women over 45. And all the conversations that aren't being had with women over 45. I'm not even sure if you're over 45, but I certainly am. And I love her platform. It's like a $4.99 a month membership, and she has all these contributors that are writing articles. She asked me to be a contributor. So I wrote an article this morning about the name of it I was like, here's a couple of title ideas. One of them was, are you all dried up? How to reignite the passion for what you do? Because
I love it.
Women over 45, some things start to dry up, but your passion doesn't have to be one of them, which is the second title. At our age, things start to dry up, but your passion for what you do doesn't have to be one of them. And I talk about the pivot after 40 because I've pivoted multiple times in my career. But what I did talk about was I went through major life changes in my 40s. I got divorced. I got bought out of a business that I had built for 12 years. And one of the things that I did during that time as a recommendation from my rabbi was start a daily gratitude practice. And it absolutely changed my life. And I mean, if there's one thing that anybody can walk away from this with is if you are not practicing gratitude daily, even if it's just open your eyes and think of a positive thought. And actually, what's his name? The guy that wrote, Hal Elrod talks about how actually it should be the last thought you have before you go to bed. So if you go to bed with gratitude, the chances of you waking up with gratitude are like 99% because we wake up with our last thought.
Yep.
So that was, and I know it's not too old to teach an old dog, not too late to teach an old dog new tricks. I didn't start doing a daily gratitude until I was in my early 40s. And again, completely changed my life and the trajectory of my life. I could have gone down the like, woe is me, I'm single, I have 2 little kids, life sucks, and I didn't. I was like, I'm grateful. I choose happy. That was the other thing. My power statement was, I choose happy. I am happy. And I saw myself getting through this divorce and this business breakup and just being a happier person. And so I totally believe in the whole neuroplasticity side of things.
Absolutely. And it works. And, using that gratitude as an example, baby steps for some people who might be looking at you like you have 5 heads, right? Just like you said, just think of something in your
Like
head
my
before.
teenager.
Right. And then work your way up to actually writing it in your journal. It works better, just in the brain if you're actually pen to paper and not even like typing it in your phone. That's another step, but the final step would be actually writing it in a journal. And you don't even have to ever go back and read it. It's just the act of writing it down, thinking of it, that critical thinking. You're involving different parts of your brain. You're starting that connection between different areas and different pathways to really get the ball rolling. And you will see that your life is now, in the decisions that you make, are all with that gratitude. Yeah. I first learned about it from Oprah Winfrey, actually. She was talking about it in one of her shows. I'm like, if it's good enough for Oprah, it's good enough for me.
I love that. I actually just watched something that Oprah recorded back in 1995 with Deepak Chopra that was all about longevity. And I was like, I can't believe they were talking about this in 1995. I was absolutely amazed. Like, I've been on this longevity kick for the last couple of months, maybe like a year now. And I was like, holy cow, this has been a conversation for 30 years. He is so far before his time.
Mhm.
And, just what an amazing thing to look at 30 years later and be like, finally, people are starting to study, and neuroscience has a ton to do with longevity. Like, you think you're going to live longer and you want to be healthier, and you start picturing yourself at that, 70 is the new middle age. Instead, I don't look at 50. I don't look at myself as middle aged. I'm going to be 50 next year. I'm like,
Great.
let 70 or 80 be my middle age, because I
Yeah.
certainly don't feel middle aged. I feel better than ever. So anyway, we could literally have this conversation for hours. My podcasts are usually not 42 minutes long, but I'm excited that we've had such a great conversation today. So thank you.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me on. And, anytime, I'm always happy to come back and we can continue these conversations over on Clubhouse, whatever. I'm here to serve and help and support. So.
Oh, I love that idea. Let's definitely get a Clubhouse room on the books.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Love it.
Amazing. Thank you. Anything what you want to end on? All of your information will be in the show notes. So if anybody wants to find you, they know where to find you. And I will make sure I get a link to this course so that people can sign
Yes.
up for it. Yeah. Awesome.
And my tagline is I make neuroscience approachable. And that's because I am an approachable person. And I don't want people to feel intimidated when even just the word neuroscience can be scary for some people. So there is no such thing as a dumb question. And there's no such thing as it. I have heard some pretty interesting questions in my years, but any question, big or small, just ask me. Anybody is welcome to book a complimentary discovery call. You can find that information on my website, or shoot me an email or message me or reach out to me on Instagram or Clubhouse. I'm happy and welcome all questions and ideas and topics. And I really look forward to continuing our relationship with the double Y's, Hayley's with the double Y, but then also, meeting some of these other foster women and other people, with both of our networks to be able to work together. So I'm excited that we met.
Absolutely. Me too, Hayley. And this was amazing. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Foster Your Passion podcast.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Hayley Foster, and I hope you'll join me next time for more inspiring women who are fostering their passions each and every day. Please subscribe wherever you download your podcast and follow us on social media at Fostering 101.